as we were introduced here, I'm Brett McCorkle. I've been with Erie for about 14 years now in a number of different roles, and we're kind of really excited to talk to you about some of the experiences we've had here, and I'm going to let my colleagues here introduce themselves and then give a bit of a background. I realize we're kind of cursed with knowledge about what we've done so far, and I want to make sure that you understand the context of that as well.
Okay, so, hi. Oh, that's very loud. My name is Rita Briody. I have been working with these two for about, 4 years now on Wearables. I was introduced to Wearables in 2012 through a friend of mine who worked at Google X on the original versions. And he was a optical engineer, so he got me interested, and it had absolutely nothing to do with my work at Erie, but I just found it to be, there were so many applications that went along with it that it caught my interest, and you'll see later on how that kind of folds into our story. So, and then there's Jeremy.
My name is Jeremy Sloan. I'm a software engineer in test automation, meaning that my background is mostly in testing as well as building software to test other software. So I got involved with this group at the, our company had an innovation challenge, and I'm going to try and go through this in about 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. And basically at the end of that, there were a small number of projects selected to move forward, one of those being the idea of using Google Glass as a hands-free camera to help out our claims adjusters. Yep. And without getting into much more detail than that.
So that's part of the context I wanted to give you all. It's kind of a weird way how we got to where we're at with all of this. We're mostly, three schlubs from IT, right? We're not, directors of anything. We're not in charge of anything.
No, we are the worker bees.
Yes, sometime in 2013, Rita was exposed to Google Glass and introduced us to it. And we got really excited about it and wanted to figure out how we could use this in insurance, but realized we were a solution looking for a problem, right? And that's where serendipity kind of came into place. I had the wonderful misfortune of having a claim at my house, and saw the claim adjuster and the process they went through and the equipment they used, and I just thought, we've got to fix this. This is just not right, making people work like this. So we started shopping it around the company, and then what I called, it was just dumb shit luck, that our CEO decided that he was going to have this innovation challenge, right? And out of hundreds of ideas, we were selected, and then it was, well, good luck, go and implement it, see what you can do. Mm-hmm. And so we targeted claims adjusters. We were trying to keep them safe on ladders and on roofs. We literally had guys that would get on a ladder and do this to try and take a picture from a certain angle that they needed, because it would take them too much time to get down, move the ladder to where it would be safe to do that and get back up. Mm-hmm. And people were getting injured that way. And then we had risk control get really interested in it, and they acknowledged the risks that they had, ironically, that the insurance industry was facing a 400,000 job deficit in the next 4 years. We needed to train new employees, and they knew that their staff needed to be retrained, and it cost them a lot of money to send people out in the field, and what could Wearables do to help augment that? So really, what we're going to talk through here is the summation of about over 3 years of working on pilots and experiments on different use cases in a Fortune 500 insurance company. So with that, we'll dig into this. We call this "What Good Could Come From That" because that's something that we heard a lot as we were trying to explain this to people. And one of the first things you really have to do is just try to get people on board with the idea of what you're doing. Whether that's offering free candy or just getting them to, what's that?
Sorry, it's don't do it from a van.
Or just getting them to realize, what's in this for them. And so usually when you approach somebody with a pair of wearables and explain to them what you want them to do, their response is like, well, you want me to do what? I remember the first meeting we had. What's that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember the first meeting we had to plan this out. I walk in the room and I see one of the risk adjusters, and he doesn't know who I am. I've never met him, but he turns to his supervisor next to him and just goes, I don't know why the hell I'm here. I don't know why we need this. This doesn't make any sense. And so immediately I'm like, hi, I'm Brett. Nice to meet you. That's the very first person that I want to try and get on board and thinking about how you could use this and how it could benefit your job. You need to understand why people are resistant to change and how you can overcome that, including them in the process of that change. Don't go off and create this thing on your own and go and implement with them. And then you have to support them. We held weekly calls with our pilot groups just to hear their experiences in the field, what they did, what they didn't like, what they were struggling with. So that gave us an opportunity to target those groups that were having, those people that were having specific issues, and we could work to overcome those specific issues. This technology is so new. The benefit is you're usually not going to roll out hundreds or thousands. You're going to roll out a couple dozen, and that allows you to be a little more one-on-one focused with these people that don't necessarily know how to use the technology or aren't keenly interested in it. And that really allows you to develop a relationship with them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so managing the expectations, could you move that down a little bit, of the organization earning their trust. One of the things that we found, because we did not have a innovation group, this was like we had won a contest basically, and we were kind of like let go. They said, here's some.
They said, good luck, make it work.
Make it work. Here's your time frame, and by the way, it was really strictly watched because this was very new. But what we found was that not having that structure, I think, kind of helped us because we were able to go out and make an effort to find, I don't want to use champions, it's kind of like overused, but you want to find, your allies, people who, preferably in leadership, and that's just to get the buy-in from the top that you might not necessarily have just, people like us working with it every day. We're kind of, like I said, cursed with knowledge. We had to talk to them and get them really to understand, why is this worth my time? Like, why am I helping you? Why is this worth my time? And after you do that, I'm be really fast about this. We came up with some very specific goals. We were very time boxed. We had every week and every day up on our wall, and we would give really regular reports to not only the leadership who we were fortunate enough to have be our champions, but also to, like he said, the people that we were working with. So we made sure that we had their buy-in, and that is so critical because not only from the people who are working, on it, but if you can get a leadership buy-in, if you don't have an innovation group, that's really important. So, if you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and we found that storytelling in that process was immensely helpful. Mm-hmm. Actually being able to explain a story of how it helped somebody or how it was useful, that speaks way more than just trying to explain the features of something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we gotta go on. Yeah.
So, culture each process for breakfast. At the end of our first wearable experiment, we all had a number of bruises and cuts and scrapes, and we did everything wrong, and we somehow managed to get through it anyway, but we learned from it. And When we first got a dedicated space to do our second wearable experiment, which if you don't give your teams dedicated spaces, everything's a little bit harder. Just kind of throw that out there. Yeah. The first thing that I wrote on the board was culture eats process for breakfast. And what I mean by that is that if you think that you're going to design a process to get past some kind of organizational dysfunction or avoid something that's in your company culture, that's not going to work. Whatever processes you design, whatever you come up with to get through your experimentation needs to take all those things into account, understand them, and honestly try and address them. As I mentioned, it's important to have dedicated resources. Identifying and being able to communicate clearly with your stakeholders is also crucial. You know, the communication that you do at the end user level, your pilot participants, obviously is going to be different from what you give to an executive, but you need to understand what those messages should be and make sure that you're keeping those people in the loop. Mm-hmm. You're going to find that some portion of your audience is going to be very enthusiastic about this stuff, but unless you're communicating with them, they're going to lose that enthusiasm. They need to know what's going on. It's important to account for self-interest as well. I have a very good relationship with my supervisor personally because we both understand that my success is his success and vice versa. All of our stakeholders, we need to have that kind of relationship in mind when we're dealing with them. And it's also important to clear a path for R&D. The same things that are going to give your enterprise success in operational projects are not the same things that are going to make R&D experiments successful. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the future.
All right. And this last piece, we all know we all work in a lot of different industries. The insurance industry is regulated much differently than others. In some industries are regulated much more stringently than insurance is, and insurance is much more stringent than certain other ones. We really started with trying to understand how people would react to this technology. There tends to be a resistance when they don't understand this. And so we focused around treating them how we would want to be treated with this in that regard. You know, and we had to go back to our lawyers and our law group and say, all right, what can we do and what can't we do? What should we avoid? But any time that we engaged with somebody, we brought a pamphlet to them. Mm-hmm. So if we went out to a customer, or if we went out to a manufacturer that we insure, we brought something with us to actually inform them, like, this is what we're doing with your information, this is what we're not. We're trying to be as transparent as possible, because one bad experience can actually take away from all of the good experiences that you did have.
Yeah, that's part of the rollout.
Yeah.
When our employees went out, the assessors or whoever, we had a card done up by marketing, and it just explained everything, and we just let them keep it. And they had the option right there, you know, like, we don't want to do this, no problem, and we would let it go. But most of the time, I think they were not only interested in it, they were curious about it, and they were kind of like insurance, you know, like, class, this is really kind of out there. So it was, that was a neat kind of confluence that we were able to find right off the bat. So, yeah, so. Okay, so the way that we went about this, we all started as technical writers. So our natural inclination is to, we go in and we talk to the subject matter expert, so that would be the users. And I think that really helped us in particular, especially with this unstructured way that we were kind of set loose with this project. And so we had been taking some courses with the Stanford design thinking process, this is their model right here. And there's a couple more now. It's getting a lot more popular. Keep in mind, this was like 2 years ago. But this also ties in with a lot of what, I keep thinking brain on a stick. Brian yesterday was talking about, Brian Laughlin, okay, at the closing, where he said that empathy and humility are so, so important. And this might seem like a fuzzy concept that, well, maybe we can blow that off. No, it's like, this is where you start. Because you could have something fabulous. We could, build something great, or, we were convinced we had something really useful and that was going to save the company millions of dollars or whatever. If the people that you're trying to get to use it are not engaged, or they don't feel like they've been heard, it's either going to be like they'll be okay with it for a couple weeks and then they'll just stop using it, or they just won't be interested at all. So what we did is the very first thing we did was we went and just rode along with people, and that was for both groups. So we just kept our mouths shut. We sat in the cars with them. We drove and just watched what they did, took notes, and then like at lunch we would talk and ask them questions and say, this is what we have. How could this help you? What would make your job easier? Maybe not even prefacing it with this is what we have. First we say, what makes your job easier? What could help you? And then we could figure out later, well, this fits into the puzzle here. And that's kind of how we built upon that. And there's a lot more to go in there, but we have to move along here. But just again, empathy and humility and respect for the user are so important.
And if you don't have anybody in your group that you're working with on this that has that level of EQ, that emotional intelligence, go and find it.
Find one,
and give them a voice on the team, because you need to have somebody who's advocating for those end users and isn't just focused on how do we best implement this technology.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of the other speakers have discovered that as well.
So how do you go about evaluating something like this? I'll say first that the right choice isn't always the best choice. And what I mean by that is that the most elegant piece of software or hardware or whatever may not be the best thing to do your first experiment with. In our case, we looked at 3 different vendors that were providing support for Google Glass, and they all had a different organizational size, different levels of product complexity, and the one that we ended up picking was, quite frankly, the one that just worked when they did the demo, and the company that was most interested in our success. The ones that were, start to finish, trying to make sure that we were successful along the way. And another key point to this is that the practices that make software and hardware development successful are going to be the same whether you're working in your garage or in a large enterprise, but the degree of rigor that you put around those things is going to be different based on context. And for example, we have a enterprise-grade multi-million-dollar whatever test management system, and we did the majority of our testing based on a mind map that we did on a whiteboard. We didn't use that at all because it wasn't appropriate scale. So it's important to keep that in mind too, especially when you're time boxed. And even if you're not time boxed, you probably want to do that to yourself, because that level of urgency helps drive success.
So when it comes to technology partners, we've seen several out there. From what we understand, there's still a lot of consolidation that's going on. There isn't a one best device for everything or a one best platform. There really isn't even a common platform. So there's a lot of work to be done there. But the one thing we have noticed is typically you're not set up to support this type of technology in-house inherently. So ongoing support is probably just as important as the product that they're offering, their ability to actually support the devices, support the users, and support you trying to implement this as you're going through it.
I just want to add to that, the the level of enthusiasm and support you see from them probably the first time is a really good indicator. We were able to, I mean, there was first impressions that we all had, and then we were able to make a decision pretty much based on our gut reaction to that. And they were outstanding as far as the support goes. But that connection that we made with them was vital to our success, because we were so time boxed that every time we would have an issue come up, and this was all new. I mean, this was like 2 years ago now, so it's new. But they were able to respond really quickly. So that's an important thing.
All right. I know
that vendor relationship.
I know everyone's probably eager to get to lunch. We'll try and summarize the last few points we have here. One thing I have noticed, we've talked about ROI quite a bit in the last day and a half, and I will offer somewhat of a challenge to the traditional ROI discussion that's occurred. It's valid in any industry, in any company, but I think there's a context that with this type of technology, you can't look for that ROI day 1 or day 10 or 6 months after that, and if it's not there, kill it. You have to, it's more about creating either a culture that says you want to experiment more, you want to look into some of these things more, and find those intangible impacts it provides to your organization when you show that you can actually experiment with technologies in ways that you never could before. And also recognize the fact that a lot of startups, in insurance in particular, we have insurtechs that they're not looking for ROI day 1, but they're coming after your business. And so how do you adapt to that type of a competitor where they're getting rounds of funding, but not necessarily having to play by the same rules as you, and how they look at new technology? You want to focus on the long tail. Does this give you an advantage because you've started working with this technology now instead of 10 years from now or 5 years from now?
One other thing, I would avoid thinking of traditional ROI really quick. A story that I won't forget is when we were having our weekly talks with the people who were actually in the field testing it. What happened, one of the women said to us, if you can make this work, and we were still, we didn't know yet, you are going to improve the quality of my life so much. So how do you quantify that ROI? What we took from that was she had some physical problem that made it very difficult for her to have to cover her, it was 8 hours of driving she had to do a couple of weeks. And our proof of concept was going to make her life that much better. So when you're thinking of ROI, okay, fine, that's great, but when you have a happy employee who's not only more productive, but their lives are changed because of a piece of technology, that's, I think you have to think of that as well as part of non-traditional ROI.
Sure, if you guys are willing to stick around, we'd be happy to answer questions.
We don't know much.
Are there any questions from the audience? Questions?
No questions.
I think everyone knows that the lunch is next.
All right. Well, we'll have lunch if you want to ask us any questions.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.